There is a moment so quiet it leaves no mark on a calendar when a child stops being a child. No one writes it down, no one remembers the exact hour, but somewhere between the ages of 6 and 10, a small mind looks at a broken adult and makes a decision it was never equipped to make. I will hold this together because no one else will. This is not a story about one child. It is the story of millions hidden inside grown bodies, in offices, in marriages, in quiet apartments where they still, without knowing why, apologize for taking up space. Today, we go inside the psychology of the child who grew up too fast and the adult who has been trying to come home ever since. Long before psychology had a name for it, storytellers already understood the shape of this wound. The eldest daughter who raised her siblings, the son who became the man of the house at 9. Cultures across centuries have quietly celebrated a kind of premature strength, calling it maturity, calling it character, never asking what it cost. It was only in the last century that researchers gave this pattern a clinical name: parentification. It describes what happens when the natural order of a family quietly reverses, when a child becomes the one who soothes, manages, and protects instead of being soothed, managed, and protected. Parentification takes two forms. The first is practical: cooking meals, managing money, caring for younger siblings. The second is far quieter and far more corrosive. It is emotional parentification, where a child becomes the confidant, the therapist, the emotional regulator for a parent who cannot regulate themselves. Picture it: a mother in tears at midnight and a child, not yet 10, whispering that everything will be fine. In that instant, the roles of the household silently trade places. The parent becomes the one who needs comforting, the child becomes the source of comfort, and no one ever asks the child how heavy that job really is. Neuroscience now shows us what earlier generations only sensed. A child's nervous system develops in relationship with its caregivers. When that relationship is inconsistent, frightening, or reversed, the brain adapts for survival, not for peace. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, becomes oversensitive. The child learns to scan every room for danger before they learn to simply exist in it. Psychologists call this hypervigilance. It is the body's way of saying, I cannot afford to relax because last time I did, something broke. For a child living inside chaos, constant alertness is not a flaw, it is intelligence. It is the mind doing exactly what it was built to do: keep you safe by any means necessary. And here is the cruelty hidden inside the praise. The world rewards this child. Teachers call them mature, relatives call them wise beyond their years. Every compliment reinforces the mask, and slowly the child forgets that underneath the composure is a person who was never actually asked whether they wanted the job. This is the birth of what therapists call the false self, a version of a person built entirely to be needed, to be useful, to be safe to love. It performs competence so convincingly that even its owner starts to believe it. But somewhere behind it, an earlier self waits, frozen at the exact age it stopped being a child. Fast forward 20 years. This is no longer a child in a chaotic house. This is an adult at a dinner table, in a boardroom, in a marriage, and the old survival patterns have simply changed costume. Hyper-independence looks like ambition. Emotional numbness looks like calm. The inability to rest looks like discipline. No one sees the exhaustion underneath because it was never allowed to be seen. Consider a woman we will call Elena, a composite drawn from countless real stories. As a child, she managed her father's moods the way other children managed toys. As an adult, she cannot sit still without guilt. Productivity became the only language in which she ever felt worthy of love, and rest still feels, to this day, like danger in disguise. Consider a man we will call Thomas,
As a boy, he learned that needing anything made him a burden. As an adult, he cannot let a partner care for him without flinching. Love, to him, quietly registers as debt, something that must eventually be repaid, never simply received. This is one of the most common mistakes people make when they begin to understand this pattern. They turn the insight into another form of self-punishment. They say, "So I'm broken, so I'm the problem, so I need fixing." But parentification was never a character flaw. It was an adaptation, brilliant in its context, and costly only because the context never changed. Healing does not begin with fixing, it begins with witnessing. Therapists who work with adult survivors of parentification describe a single turning point that changes everything. The moment the person finally says, out loud, to themselves, that what happened to them actually happened, and it was not their fault. This is the beginning of reparenting, the deliberate, sometimes clumsy practice of giving yourself now what you needed then. Not perfection, not a cure, just presence, a quiet internal voice that finally says, "I see how much you carried, and you do not have to carry it alone anymore." Practically, this looks like small, repeated acts of rebellion against the old survival rules, resting without earning it first, saying no without over-explaining, letting someone else carry a conversation, a decision, a bad day, without stepping in to fix it. Each one is a tiny proof to the nervous system that safety no longer requires vigilance. It also looks like relationships built on a new rule, mutual need instead of one-sided rescue, letting a partner see you struggle, letting a friend ask if you are truly okay, and answering honestly instead of performing fine. This is uncomfortable at first because for so long, being needed felt safer than being known. The child who grew up too fast was never given a choice, but the adult they became now has one. The choice to stop mistaking exhaustion for virtue, the choice to stop confusing usefulness with worth, the choice, finally, to grow up a second time, not out of fear, but out of truth. You never had a childhood the way it should have been, but you still have a future, and this time you are the one holding the pen. Let the child inside you rest. Let them play. Let them, for the first time, simply be young. Because becoming whole was never about becoming someone new. It was always about finally coming home to who you were before the world asked you to grow up too fast.